The morning my sister-in-law threw a manila folder across the conference table and told me to sign or get out, I remember thinking how strange it was that the room smelled like fresh coffee. Someone had brewed a full pot. Nobody touched it. I set my pen down, slowly, and I said no. What happened next? The way my mother-in-law's chair scraped back, the sound her palm made when it connected with my cheek. That part I'll get to. But first you need to understand how I ended up in that room at all, because none of it makes sense without the 7 years that came before it. My name is Lorelei, I'm 31. When I married my husband Owen 3 years ago, I thought I was marrying a man. I didn't fully understand I was also marrying a corporation. Owen's family owned Hargrove and Sons Construction, a regional contracting company his grandfather had built from nothing in the 1970s and grown into something worth, at the time of our wedding, somewhere between $14 and $18 million depending on which quarter you asked. Owen was the youngest of three. His older brother ran operations. His older sister handled the books. Owen was supposed to take over client development, which is how we met. He came to pitch my employer on a commercial renovation contract, and I was the one who sat across the table from him. I thought that was funny later, that the first time we ever met, we were both sitting across a table from each other trying to win. We dated for 14 months. We got married in June on a property his family owned outside Asheville. His mother gave a toast that mentioned Owen's late grandfather 4 times, and me 0. I laughed about it on the drive to our honeymoon. Owen squeezed my hand and said, "She just needs time." She had 3 years. It was never enough. I want to be honest about something. I didn't go into that marriage blind. I knew his family had opinions about me. I was not for money. My mother worked as a home health aide. My father left when I was 9. I put myself through college on a combination of scholarships, loans, and working 30 hours a week at a hotel front desk. I graduated with a degree in business administration and eventually built a career in commercial real estate development, finding sites, analyzing deals, managing the paperwork and permits and personalities that go into turning an empty lot into something that pays rent. His mother called me practical, the way some people say serviceable, like I was a good enough couch but not the one they would have chosen for the living room. His sister, I'll call her my sister-in-law because I still can't say her name without my jaw tightening, was worse. She was 5 years older than Owen, sharp in that brittle way where intelligence curdles into contempt. She had an MBA from a school that cost more than my entire childhood. She handled Hargrove and Sons finances, and she handled them well, which I actually respected, even when she made it clear she would never respect me back. The first Christmas I spent with Owen's family, my sister-in-law pulled me aside in the kitchen while I was refilling a water pitcher and told me, conversationally, like she was commenting on the weather, that she hoped I wasn't under any illusions about what I was walking into. "The company stays in the family," she said. "The real family." I smiled. I said, "I'm not here for the company. I'm here for Owen." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she took her wine glass and walked back to the living room. I should have paid more attention to that look. Owen died 14 months into our marriage. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part, because it is the part that still hollows me out if I let it. He had an undetected heart condition, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a structural thickening of the heart muscle that can sit completely silent for decades and then kill you in a Tuesday afternoon. He was 34 years old. He was in the parking lot of a hardware store. He had texted me 20 minutes earlier asking if we needed anything for dinner. The grief was the kind that doesn't behave like grief is supposed to. It wasn't dramatic. It was just absence, a shape in the room that used to be a person. What I was not prepared for was the speed with which the grief in his family's house became secondary to everything else. Owen had a will. We had made them together. One of those practical adult conversations newlyweds have that feel slightly surreal. He left me his personal assets, his half of our jointly held property, and something that none of his family knew about until the estate attorney opened the file. Owen had been quietly, carefully accumulating his own equity stake in Hargrove and Sons for the past 4 years, purchasing shares from minority holders, exercising options, making arrangements with his grandfather's original partner, a quiet, retired man named Mr. Aldridge who had held a small interest and had liked Owen enormously. By the time Owen died, he held 22% of the company. He left all of it to me. I found out the same day his family did, a week after the funeral, in the estate attorney's office. His mother sat across from me in a gray blazer and did not cry. His sister had a legal pad. His brother kept checking his phone. The attorney read the relevant section. There was a pause. His mother turned to look at me the way you look at something you've just realized has been in your house the whole time without your permission. His sister said calmly, "That won't hold." The attorney said equally calmly that it was fully executed and properly witnessed. His sister wrote something on her legal pad. I drove home and sat in my car in the driveway for 45 minutes. I wasn't thinking about the money or the shares or what any of it meant. I was thinking about Owen and about the fact that he had done this quietly, deliberately, over years, and never said a word to me about it. I didn't know whether to feel protected or ambushed. Later I decided the answer was both. The calls started within the week. His mother first, always in the register of reasonableness. She understood this must be an emotional time. She wanted to make sure I was taken care of. The family would of course honor whatever Owen had intended, but there were certain practical realities to consider. A 22% stake held by someone outside active operations was complicated, potentially destabilizing for a closely held company. And surely I could understand that my interests would best be served by… I let her finish. Then I said I needed time to speak with my own attorney. She said, "Of course, take all the time you need." His sister called 2 days later and skipped the reasonableness. She told me directly that the family had no intention of having an outsider with no operational role exercising shareholder rights in a private family business. She said Owen's decision, while she was sure it came from a good place, had not been made with a full understanding of the implications. She said she could have paperwork drawn up that would result in a fair buyout. Fair being her word, her number, her paperwork. I said I'd be in touch. His brother never called. He just stopped making eye contact at the few family events I still attended in those early months. That was its own kind of message. Here is something I need to tell you about myself. I spent the first decade of my career watching men and women lose things they should have kept because they didn't understand what they had in time to protect it. I watched a woman sign away her interest in a commercial property because her ex-husband's attorney made her feel like fighting would be more expensive than settling. I watched a business partner get diluted out of a company he had built because he didn't read the shareholder agreement carefully enough. I had, out of a kind of professional self-preservation, become someone who read everything twice and trusted the specifics more than the intentions. So when I said I needed time to speak with my own attorney, I actually went and did that. I found a firm that specialized in closely held business disputes. The lead attorney was a woman named, actually, I'll just call her my attorney, because she told me explicitly not to use her name in any public context related to this matter, and I respect that boundary completely. She spent 2 sessions reviewing everything: Owen's shares, the shareholder agreement, the buy-sell provisions, the company's operating history, his family's ownership structure. Then she looked at me over her glasses and said, "You are in a stronger position than they want you to know." I asked what she meant. She explained that the existing shareholder agreement had a right of first refusal clause, but that clause applied to transfers and sales, not inheritance. Owen hadn't sold me his shares. He had bequeathed them. The legal mechanism was entirely different. His family's argument about operational complications was a negotiating position, not a legal one. She also said something else. She said that in her experience, when a family moves this fast to pressure a grieving spouse into signing something, it's usually because there's something they don't want the new shareholder to see. I hadn't thought about that yet. I started thinking about it. I will not walk you through everything I learned over the next 4 months, because some of it is still subject to legal proceedings and some of it I am not ready to say out loud. What I will tell you is that 22% of a company is enough to request financial records. It is enough to ask questions at shareholder meetings. It is enough with the right attorney to compel certain disclosures. What those disclosures showed was not what I expected. I had expected sloppiness. Family business bookkeeping often is sloppy, money borrowed against company assets without proper documentation, expenses commingled with personal ones. I found some of that. But I also found something more deliberate. My sister-in-law had, over a period of approximately 3 years, been structuring payments through a subsidiary in a way that reclassified certain revenue as operating expenses. The effect was to suppress the company's apparent profitability and, consequently, its valuation. There was a potential buyer, a regional private equity group that had been in discussions with the family for 18 months. At a suppressed valuation, the buyout terms would be significantly more favorable to the majority shareholders, who had also quietly negotiated individual retention bonuses for themselves as part of the deal. Owen had held 22%. At the real valuation, that stake was worth considerably more than the number his sister had offered me in her fair buyout call. I sat with this for 2 weeks. I did not tell anyone except my attorney. I did not confront his family. I went to Sunday dinner twice during this period and ate quietly and helped clear the dishes. His mother, both times, mentioned that she hoped I was moving toward a decision about the shares, that she knew this was hard, that she would have wanted peace. I said I was still thinking. I was thinking very hard. The meeting was scheduled under the pretext of a shareholder update. The family had apparently decided that a formal setting might move things along. I was told it would be a discussion. I arrived at the Hargrove & Sons conference room on a Wednesday morning to find a folder of documents already at my seat. My sister-in-law was at the head of the table. Her attorney was beside her. Her brother was on the phone in the corner and hung up when I came in. His mother arrived 3 minutes after me and sat directly across from me and smiled with her mouth. I looked at the documents. They were a share transfer agreement. My name was already printed at the signature line. The consideration, the amount they were offering to buy Owen's shares, was the suppressed valuation number. I looked at it for a long moment. My sister-in-law said, "We wanted to make this easy for you. We know you've been through a lot." I looked up at her. "I've reviewed this." "Good. So, you understand it's a fair, I understand what it says." There was a pause. His mother folded her hands on the table. His brother closed the office door. His sister said, "Lorelei, we're trying to resolve this simply. Owen is gone. You have no role here. The most sensible thing is to let the company continue as it was." "As it was," I said, "with the adjusted figures." The room went very quiet. His sister said, "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked at her attorney. Something passed between them. Not panic, not yet, but the first faint tremor of it. His mother said in the voice she used when she was done pretending, "Sign the papers, Lorelei. You got what you could from this family. Don't make it ugly." I picked up the pen. I looked at it. Then I set it back down. I said, "No." His mother stood up from her chair. I watched it happen and I did not fully believe it even as it was occurring. She crossed the distance between us and she slapped me across the face. Open palm. Hard enough that I felt it in my back teeth. The room froze. Her attorney said, quietly, "Margaret." She said, "She is taking something that does not belong to her." I did not cry. I want to tell you I was calm because I'm strong, but the truth is, I had gone somewhere very still inside. The kind of still that happens when the thing you feared most has already happened and there's nothing left to be afraid of. I reached into my bag and took out my phone. I pressed a button. Then I placed it flat on the table. I said, "I've been recording since I walked in. That includes what just happened." The silence was a different quality now. I said, "My attorney has also filed, this morning, a formal complaint with the state's Business Oversight Board regarding the financial irregularities in the subsidiary accounts from 2021 to 2023. She has submitted supporting documentation." His sister said, "And I want to be exact about this because I have replayed it many times." She said, "You don't know what you've done." I said, "I think I do. I'm not going to tell you it racked up cleanly after that, because it didn't. The next 8 months were the most exhausting of my life. There were counter-filings and discovery and a period of 3 weeks when I couldn't sleep more than 4 hours at night, and I lost 11 pounds I didn't have to lose. There were phone calls from Owen's brother that started as arguments and ended as something closer to grief. He called me once at 11 at night and mostly didn't say anything, just breathed on the phone. And I think he was not entirely sure which side of this he was actually on. His mother never spoke to me again after that morning. That part I had expected. I found, in the silence that followed, that it was not only the bad thing it had always seemed when I thought about it. The private equity deal fell apart when the financial irregularities became part of a disclosed legal proceeding. The buyer walked. My sister-in-law retained criminal defense counsel. The regulatory inquiry is ongoing. I cannot say more than that. What I can tell you is that my 22%, valued correctly, was bought out. Through a negotiated agreement, not on their terms, for a number that would have seemed fictional to me 3 years ago. I won't say the exact amount. I'll say it was enough to make my mother cry when I told her. She had spent 40 years taking care of people in their homes. She had never once complained about it. She was going to keep working as long as she wanted to. And now the question of what happened when she couldn't was answered. That mattered more to me than any of the rest of it. I still drive by the Hargrove and Son signs sometimes when I'm in that part of town. I don't feel triumph when I see them. I don't feel much, honestly, just a kind of quiet acknowledgement that things happened and then other things happened and here we are. Owen knew something was wrong in that company before I did. I believe that now. I believe the shares were his way of making sure I had a seat at the table if I ever needed one. Not because he planned to die, but because he understood his family in a way that it took me 3 years and a great deal of pain to fully understand. I never got to ask him if I was right about that. I think about it more than I should. What I know is this: the morning his mother slapped me across the face in that conference room, something became very simple. All the grief and the uncertainty and the wondering if I was being unreasonable, all of it compressed into a single clear point. I had every right to be there. I had every right to what I held. I had every right to ask questions about things that didn't add up. And I had, sitting in my bag, a phone with an active recording. If you are in a room where someone is trying to take something from you, legally, emotionally, anyway, and they are counting on you being too tired or too grief-stricken or too aware of your own outsider status to fight, the most important thing is to know what you actually have before you walk in. Read the documents. Hire someone who tells you the truth, even when it's complicated. Take notes. Keep copies, and for the love of everything, charge your phone the night before. The greatest thing Owen ever gave me wasn't the shares, it was that he somehow knew, even then, that I was someone who would know what to do with them. I'm trying every day to be worth that. People ask me sometimes what I would do differently, and I sit with that question for a while before I answer, because I think it deserves honesty rather than the tidy version. The truth is, not much. Not because everything went well, because it didn't. Not for a long time. But because every mistake I made taught me something I couldn't have learned any other way. And I'm not sure I'd be willing to trade the knowledge for the easier path. What I've come to understand about the whole situation with Owen's family is that their behavior was never really about me. Margaret didn't slap me because I was wrong. She slapped me because I was right, and she knew it, and she had run out of other options. That distinction matters more than it might seem. When people act out of fear, real, cornered fear, they stop being strategic and start being exposed. The moment she crossed that room, she handed me something no attorney could have manufactured. She showed everyone in that room exactly what kind of people they were dealing with. My sister-in-law spent 3 years quietly manipulating numbers, suppressing valuations, managing perceptions. She was intelligent, careful, and thorough. And none of it worked, in the end, because she built the whole structure on the assumption that I wouldn't look, that I was grieving and overwhelmed and too aware of being an outsider to ask hard questions. She underestimated me, not out of cruelty exactly, but out of a kind of lazy certainty that people like me don't fight back. That certainty was her real mistake, not the accounting irregularities, not the suppressed valuation. Those were symptoms. The root was the assumption that I could be managed. I think about Owen a lot when I think about this. He never once told me what he'd done with those shares, and at first that bothered me, felt like a secret, like he hadn't trusted me with it. But I've shifted on that. I think he knew me well enough to know that if he'd told me, I would have argued with him. I would have said it was too much, that it would cause problems with his family, that I didn't need it. He knew I would have talked him out of it, so he just did it, quietly, and left it there for me to find. That's not deception. That's somebody who paid attention. The thing about intelligence, real intelligence, not just credentials, is that it's only useful when you're willing to apply it to uncomfortable situations. It's easy to be smart about other people's problems. It's much harder to be clear-eyed about your own, especially when you're grieving, especially when the people pressuring you are framing every document as an act of mercy. I had to make myself read what was in front of me instead of what I wished was there. That discipline, that refusal to look away from the specific, uncomfortable truth, is the only reason any of this resolved the way it did, and the courage part. I want to be careful here because I don't think I'm particularly brave. I was scared in that conference room. My hands were completely steady and my heart was going about twice its normal speed. But I'd walked in prepared, and preparation is what courage actually looks like most of the time. It's not the absence of fear. It's having done the work beforehand so that when the moment comes, you're not deciding, you're just executing. What I want anyone to take from this, if they take anything, know what you have before you walk into the room. Not what you hope you have. What you actually, provably, documentably have. Because the people on the other side of the table already know, and if you don't, you're negotiating blind. Owen knew that. He left me a seat at the table. The least I could do was sit down in it.